Hey everyone, and welcome back to Global Insights, where we explore contemporary events through the lens of political science, international relations, and political economy. I'm Noah Zerbe. I'm a professor of international relations at California State Polytechnic University Humboldt, and today we're going to take a closer look at a bold new proposal from French President Emmanuel Macron, the idea of extending France's nuclear umbrella to cover its European allies. What does this mean for Europe, NATO, and the future of transatlantic security? Let's dive in. So let's start by unpacking what exactly Macron is proposing. In a televised speech on March 5th, President Macron announced that France would be opening a strategic dialogue about whether and how to extend its nuclear deterrent, the only nuclear arsenal in the European Union, to help protect other European countries.
Our nuclear deterrence protects us. It is French from A to Z. It has been in place ever since 1964, and it has always played an essential role in ensuring peace and security in Europe. But when we want to reach out to our German Chancellor, our new German Chancellor, we want to ensure that deterrence applies to all European allies. Whatever may come to be, that decision to use the nuclear deterrence will always remain in the hands of the French president and head of the armed forces.
This comes at a time when, from the European perspective at least, the commitment of the United States to European security is increasingly uncertain. Why now? Several factors are at play. First, U.S. President Donald Trump's skepticism towards NATO and his calls for Europe to take more responsibility for its own defense have raised alarms. If this feels familiar, it's because it is. For more than 60 years, U.S. presidents from Kennedy to Obama have all sounded the alarm about NATO allies not pulling their weight. Trump didn't invent this complaint, he just turned up the volume. And while some NATO members, like Poland and the Baltic states, have increased their military spending above the 2% target, many others have yet to do so. Second, Russia's continued aggression towards Ukraine and its threats towards NATO members are bringing Cold War-style nuclear deterrence back into the spotlight. Traditionally, Europe relied on the U.S. nuclear umbrella, but with American reliability increasingly in question, some European leaders, especially in Poland and the Baltic states, are cautiously welcoming Macron's proposal. And this brings us to the concept of nuclear deterrence, the idea that possessing nuclear weapons discourages other countries from attacking because the cost of nuclear retaliation is just too high. But deterrence only works if the threat of response is credible. For decades, the U.S. nuclear umbrella covered its NATO allies, meaning that the United States explicitly promised to retaliate if European NATO members were attacked. That promise underpinned European security throughout the Cold War and also played a role in dissuading the United States' European allies from developing their own nuclear arsenals, serving the goal of nuclear non-proliferation. But today, some question whether Washington would actually risk New York or Los Angeles to defend Warsaw or Tallinn. Indeed, President Trump has regularly threatened to let Russia have its way with NATO members who do not meet the organization's targets of having member states spend at least 2% of their gross domestic product on military preparedness and defense.
NATO was busted until I came along. I said, everybody's going to pay. They said, well, if we don't pay, are you still going to protect us? I said, absolutely not. They couldn't believe the answer. I came in, I made a speech, and I said, you got to pay up. They asked me that question. One of the presidents of a big country stood up and said, well, sir, if we don't pay and we're attacked by Russia, will you protect us? I said, you didn't pay? You're delinquent? He said, yes, let's say that happened. No, I would not protect you. In fact, I would encourage them to do whatever the hell they want. You got to pay. You got to pay your bills. Most politicians have said to that, yes, we will protect you under any circumstance. Well, then they're never paying up. I said, no, you have to understand, you don't pay your bills, you get no protection. It's very simple. Hundreds of billions of dollars came into NATO, and that's why they have money today, because of what I did.
In this context, the threat of American nuclear deterrence is severely undermined. That's where France's offer comes in, but there's a catch. France's nuclear doctrine is fundamentally national in its orientation. France's nuclear weapons are meant to protect French vital interests, not automatically defend its neighbors. Macron's suggestion that France's deterrence could have a European dimension is deliberately vague. Would France really launch nuclear weapons on behalf of Lithuania or Germany? Without clear guarantees, France's nuclear umbrella may lack the credibility necessary for effective deterrence. And credibility is the cornerstone of deterrence theory. This ambiguity creates both risks and opportunities for France, for Europe, and for NATO. And then there's the size of the French nuclear arsenal. French nuclear policy is governed by a principle of strict sufficiency, meaning France's nuclear arsenal is kept at the minimum necessary size to maintain a credible deterrence threat, and is only to be used in extreme circumstances of national self-defense. As a result, France currently maintains about 290 nuclear warheads, giving it the world's fourth largest nuclear arsenal. About 80% of the French nuclear arsenal is deployed on its nuclear-powered submarines, with the remainder comprised of air-launched cruise missiles carried by long-range bombers. And while this is a sizable threat, it's dwarfed by the American and Russian nuclear arsenals, which are roughly 20 times larger than France's. At the heart of this issue is a basic tension. Who ultimately guarantees European security, NATO or the European Union? NATO is a military alliance built around U.S. leadership. The European Union is mostly a political and economic arrangement, and military power has always been its weak spot. France's nuclear proposal challenges this traditional division and forces Europe to confront an uncomfortable question. If the United States pulls back, can the European Union step up? France has long championed the idea of European strategic autonomy, the idea that Europe should develop its own defense capabilities independent of the United States. Extending its nuclear umbrella fits into this vision, but it also clashes with preferences of countries like Germany, which historically at least preferred to keep NATO and the United States at the heart of European security. But the EU's security capabilities are limited, and France's nuclear offer could provide a test case for whether the European Union can evolve into a credible security provider. And there's another layer, the political economy of nuclear deterrence. Nuclear arsenals are incredibly expensive to maintain and modernize. Indeed, the United States spends more than $50 billion a year just maintaining its nuclear stockpile, and it's projected to spend at least $1.5 trillion over the next 30 years to modernize and sustain its nuclear forces. Russia, by contrast, is estimated to spend about $10 billion per year maintaining its nuclear forces, though many analysts question whether or not that amount is actually enough to sustain their nuclear forces' readiness and effectiveness, as nuclear weapons tend to degrade over time. France currently spends about $6 billion a year on its nuclear forces, but extending its nuclear deterrence capabilities to cover other countries would likely require even more investment. Would Germany, Poland, and others be willing to help foot the bill? Shared nuclear deterrence means new debates in the European Union about defense spending and burden sharing. Of course, Russia isn't sitting quietly on the sidelines. The Kremlin called Macron's proposal extremely confrontational, accusing France of raising the risk of nuclear war. This type of rhetoric is part of nuclear signaling, a deliberate effort to shape perceptions of risk and resolve. But Macron may actually be embracing strategic ambiguity, the idea of keeping your adversary guessing about how far you're willing to go or can go to enhance deterrence. By refusing to spell out exactly when and how France would use its nuclear weapons for European defense, Macron creates uncertainty for Russia, which could enhance deterrence if that ambiguity is seen as credible. At the same time, though, this ambiguity also raises anxiety among France's allies. Countries like Poland and Lithuania may want clear guarantees, not vague signals. This is the delicate balancing act that Macron now faces, how to reassure allies without escalating tensions with Moscow or locking France into commitments it can't keep. So where does this leave us? France's offer is bold, but it's also uncertain. raising important questions about deterrence and credibility, the future of NATO and the European Union, and the broader evolution of European security. Whether this is the first step towards a more autonomous Europe or just a temporary response to U.S. uncertainty remains to be seen. But what do you think? Is France's nuclear umbrella the security Europe needs, or just a diplomatic gesture? Should Europe build its own nuclear future, or should it double down on NATO? Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. That's it for this episode of Global Insights. If you enjoyed the analysis, please like, subscribe, and drop your thoughts in the comments section below. I'll see you next time.